Hungarian Folk Tales. Pinko. Once upon a time, there lived an old woodcutter who was poorer than a mouse. One day, the woodcutter said to his wife, "Wife of mine, please bake me 2 corn cakes that I can take them out to work with me so that I won't have to come home to eat." So the woodcutter's wife baked the cakes, put them in the woodcutter's bag, and he set off to work in the forest. Down in the forest lived old Paluto, and old Paluto had a young son called Pinko. Pinko listened keenly to the sound of the woodcutter's axe and watched the old woodcutter from the shadows. Then the crafty boy took the woodcutter's bag down and gobbled up both the corn cakes. But old Paluto got wind of what his son had done. "Where are you, Pinko?" old Paluto called out to his son. "Here I am, father." "Come quickly, where have you been?" "I have just gobbled up the old woodcutter's corn cakes." "As you felt no pity for the poor woodcutter, you will now have to serve for 3 long years in return. Do you understand?" This news saddened Pinko, but he agreed to do his father's bidding. So he turned on his heels and went back to the woodcutter. When he arrived, he said, "Woodcutter, I am the one who ate your corn cakes. So be happy, my child, and don't sound so sad. But it doesn't work like that because my father has punished me and told me that I should work as your servant for 3 long years. There is no need, my child, because I could never pay you, but I can earn my own living." And wonder of wonders, Pinko plucked the trees from the ground and knocked them together to make neat logs to be stacked. By the time night came, he had cleared the whole forest. "Can we go home now?" "Yes, but first I want to gather some sticks for the fire." Pinko set hard to work and gathered up so much firewood that even 20 oxen could not have carted it home. Then he lifted the poor woodcutter up and placed him on top of the pile. The very next day, the poor woodcutter went to the rich farmer to tell him that he had felled, cut and stacked all the wood for winter. The farmer was reluctant to believe him, and so he sent servants to see for themselves. They returned in the evening and informed him that the forest had been cleared and neatly stacked for winter. So the rich farmer was forced to pay the poor woodcutter. Then the woodcutter made his way home, where he and Pinko agreed that they should seek work with the Baron the very next day. "You came at the very best time," the Baron told them, "because the field I have to plough would take 100 men, a year and a day to complete." So the old man went to the market with Pinko, where they purchased 2 young calves and then went back to the field to plough it. There were very many men ploughing with a dozen oxen. So Pinko strode out to the middle of the field, and by noon he had already ploughed more than all the other men put together. The other workers were so impressed by Pinko's calves that they asked for what price he would gladly sell them. But Pinko was proud of the calves and asked for a sack of gold along with the 12 oxen. They bargained and bargained until the Baron agreed to pay Pinko's asking price. The sack of gold was measured out for him, he was given the 12 oxen, and then he was sent on his way. The Baron's men began to plough the land with the 2 calves, but however they pulled and pushed the tiny beasts, they would not work. They quickly reported the bad news to the Baron, who ordered them to search for Pinko and bring him back at once. The men soon caught Pinko. Then Pinko took the handle of the plough in one hand, cracked his whip with the other, and the calves began to plough as never before. "This is how you should do it," he told them, and he went home. Back at home, he and the woodcutter discussed where Pinko should next seek work, and they agreed that he should visit the king the very next day. "You came at the very best time," the king told them, "because the corn I have to thresh would take 100 men a year and a day to complete." They went to the barn that was piled to the rafters with corn to be threshed. But Pinko grabbed one stack and threshed it in no time at all. Then he took all the rest of the wheat, oats, millet and barley and threshed it all before the day was done. Then Pinko went to the king to tell him the corn was threshed. "Oh, but you shouldn't have done it like that." "Why, what did I do wrong? The wheat, the barley, the oats and the millet should be separate." "That's no matter. I shall sort them apart." And no sooner had he spoken than, wonder of wonders, the grain all stood in neat piles. "What payment do you ask for your hard work, son?" "Only 1 sack of wheat," Pinko said. "Very well, you may come and collect it whenever you wish." Pinko returned home, and he and the woodcutter gathered all the canvas they could find and spent a week sewing the sack. Now let's go and collect our payment. The next day they reported to the king, who ordered his bailiff to fill Pinko's sack with wheat in payment for his work. Then they went to the barn and began to fill the sack and shovel all the grain in that Pinko had threshed. But that was only enough to fill one small corner of the sack. So the farm bailiff went back to the king and told him the size of the sack that Pinko had sewn. The king said, "I have agreed, and so I shall pay, but he will never be able to take the big sack away with him." So the men continued to fill the sack with last year's grain and the grain from the year before, and the sack still was not full when they had used up wheat from the last 10 years. "What kind of king is this man who cannot pay me for an honest day's work?" Pinko complained to the bailiff. Then Pinko took the enormous sack and swung it over his shoulder, and he and the poor woodcutter left for home. They walked away without even saying goodbye, and when they got home, there was much celebration. Now they had grain, wood, oxen and gold, and could at last live a happy life. As the months turned to years, Pinko said to the woodcutter, "I have been with you now for 3 long years, so I will leave you in the morning." The woodcutter pleaded and appealed for him to stay, but Pinko left for home. And when Pinko got home, there was much celebration, and they all lived happily ever after.